If you're interested in being positioned as a thought leader and you're wondering how to get there, that might include writing a book, creating a brand, being positioned as a thought leader, and maybe the ultimate would be to go on stage, talk about what you do, how you've done it, and convert a whole room full of people into your clients in one fell swoop. And I'm talking maybe 300 people at $2,000 a pop. If that interests you, you're going to love our next guest. We're going to be talking to Raymond Aaron next on Speak on Stage. Welcome to Speak on Stage with Dave Crane, the podcast where we unpack the art and science of public speaking to help you command the stage with confidence and authority. I'm your host, Dave Crane, and as a seasoned speaker, coach, and entertainer, I've had the privilege of helping thousands of individuals like you to unlock their true potential on stage all around the world. Each week, we'll bring you candid conversations with industry experts, successful speakers, and thought leaders, delving into proven strategies, practical tips, and personal anecdotes to empower you to become a captivating communicator. So whether you're a seasoned pro looking to refine your skills or a beginner taking your first steps onto the stage, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering the craft of public speaking. So grab your notepad, open your mind, and get ready to amplify your impact as we embark on this journey together. Welcome to Speak on Stage with Dave Crane. Together, let's jump and grow wings on the way down. It's my great pleasure to invite onto the show the incredible Raymond Aaron. Now, Raymond, you and I go back maybe 10, I'm wondering whether it's 10, 15 years. Neither of us had gray hair when we last connected. It was in Dubai. And since then, I think we've both carried it. Well, me more than you have turned into Santa Claus. How are you, sir? You're in Canada now.
I'm in Canada. I've lived in Canada all my life. My name is Raymond Aaron. I'm a New York Times top 10 best-selling author. Indeed, I've written 147 books, and every one of them was published.
Amazing.
I've been a professional speaker for 41 years in 4 continents, about 25 countries, and I've learned a lot of lessons, and I'm going to convey as many lessons as I can in this wonderful podcast.
Fantastic. So we're under starters orders. One of the things I've been actually beat you on, the only thing I'll beat you on is I've actually been on stage for 50 years, which sounds ridiculous, but I was a child entertainer and I was doing shows and so on. So I've had 5 decades. I don't tell people this because they don't believe me. They just say there's no way you could have been doing it. But you know yourself, you've done 41 years. You know every part of those 41 years. And that learning curve is so special. And I think for many people, it's daunting to wonder, well, how do I start? How do I catch up? So in order to get that in perspective, could you tell us how you became a Raymond Aaron that I know and love today?
Well, you first have to have content. You have to have something that you're passionate about to deliver to the world. If you're not passionate, it's going to fail. As soon as you come across the first hardship, you'll run away. And my passion was real estate. I made a fortune in real estate. And I remember I had a few guests for dinner, and one of them told me that he had a friend who wanted to learn about real estate. I said, well, so what? I'm not going to invite him to dinner. And he said, well, why don't you rent a hotel room and invite people? And I had no thought of that, but I did. And 7 people showed up and I enrolled 3 of them. And that was the beginning of my professional speaking career. I taught real estate for 12 years. And then I don't know how spiritual you are, my dear friend, but I got a message clear as anything after 12 years of teaching real estate that I should stop teaching real estate and teach life. So I went back to my staff the next morning and said, cancel all my upcoming real estate courses. I'm going to teach life. Well, by then I'd been divorced twice. And they said, how are you qualified to teach life? Like, in fact, even if you are, what are you going to teach? And I developed some content that has been rated independently as the #1 best goal achievement program in the world. And I taught that for 12 years. And then I got another message that I should teach spirituality. And so I've been teaching spirituality and how to write a book. And I've been teaching artificial intelligence. And it's just been a wonderful journey. I'm 79 years old and I've never stopped learning.
It's amazing. So when we're talking about it, let's dial it back a little bit. I mean, I was watching a recent video, not so recent, where you're talking about the fact up until the age of 39, you didn't really have a position. You didn't, your career as a speaker and somebody who teaches people the stuff that you do is something that came out of necessity later on in life. Now, as a stage hypnotist, which is one of the things that I do, I found out that the average age of a stage hypnotist is between 40 and 60. And I believe it's
Wow.
because there's a certain amount of gravitas that you have and a sense of purpose and a sense of drive that makes people go, oh, okay, I'll pay attention. Do you think that's the case for you?
Well, it's the case for US presidents. It's the case for rulers of all countries. You have to attain a certain age before the population will believe that you have enough wisdom. And my gosh, I might have created some wisdom, but mostly I'd created crap. At age 39, I was $100,000 in debt. I was unemployed. I'd been fired by my boss. My wife had just divorced me. And I was a 39-year-old life loser. But I had made a fortune in real estate, even though I lost it in the divorce. And so I was able to teach that. So I had created the wisdom, even though I was in desperate shape financially and psychologically.
That's incredible. But let's take it to when you decided that you're going to teach people about life. Was that before the world became a life coach? Because now, if you teach people about life, they're very much like, oh, yeah, I could have read it anywhere, or somebody else will tell me about it. When you turn around and you say, I'm going to show people how to do stuff properly and most effectively, was it a challenge to be able to get people to be persuaded that that would be the way to move forward, or that they even believed you?
Well, I never called myself a life coach
No, I realize
because
that.
the only successful life coach is Tony Robbins. And he actually calls himself a life coach, and people pay a fortune to be coached by him. But otherwise, almost all life coaches are broke. I know it sounds funny, but I have a coaching program, and any person who signs up for it who calls himself a life coach, I say, so you're broke? And they all get, upset. How can you say that? And then they finally admit that they are. So I stayed away from that. And I created a program called the Monthly Mentor, where I teach people how to set and achieve goals. So they don't think of it as life coaching.
One of the things I find fascinating about that, and I've had the same experience with life coaches, and the reason I believe that they're broke is because they're not marketers. So therefore,
Yeah.
and also the system is set up. So when you become a qualified life coach, you've got to do 100 hours to get yourself to the point of being certified. So everybody you know, you've already gone to and given it for free. And then on top of it, somehow you've got to find proper paying clients. So I think the system has them on the back foot before they begin. And one of the things that always worried me was after the pandemic, I think we've had the biggest need for people who could get well-being as just something everybody could embrace and understand: anxiety, depression. And we need an army of life coaches to support the medical industry, but then they're not shown how to do it properly. And I think that's a big problem. But it is something that might not get fixed because life coaches don't know how to relate to doctors, and medical profession doesn't really need to recruit an army of life coaches when they can sell drugs instead. Does that make sense as well?
Well, you're right that life coaches are terrible marketers, so they can't get clients. But I don't want to contradict you, but there's no certification required in any country in the world to call yourself a coach or a life coach.
It's true.
So you say you need 100 hours of certification. They don't. Anybody can call themselves a life coach. So, for example, when people say to me, what qualifications do you have to be a life coach? I say, I graduated as a mathematician. They say, well, what's that got to do with anything? That's, you don't need any requirements. Like you can't call yourself a plumber. You can't call yourself an electrician. You can't call yourself a neurosurgeon unless you're certified. But anyone, no matter how broke they are, no matter how messed up their own life is, can call themselves a life coach.
Well, from
So
experience, sorry, go on, go on.
the whole profession is a little bit unbelievable.
Mm. So, I mean, I'm talking about I don't want to have a go at ICF, International Coaching Federation, but they state that you need to have your 100 hours before you can get the certifications. And but we don't want to talk about that. That's
Oh, David, to get their certification,
exactly, exactly.
the government doesn't require any license to be a coach.
And I think that the most effective coaches and mentors have done it before. They've actually gone out there and proven what you can do because they've got examples and proofs, trust and
Yes.
credibility. And that means having a brand, which is super important. Now, you are one of the best branded speakers I've seen. When you're on stage, A, stand up comedian, B, mentor and teacher. But I would also add to the fact that when you speak, the credibility that you do, every second slide has got a major star saying work with Raymond Aaron, which is a fantastic thing to have. So do you think that with the influencers that we have out nowadays who are going out and saying me, they've missed the opportunity or they haven't got the credibility to turn around and say that they are influential and they're not branded enough to be able to do that?
If you're serious, if you're intent on making a difference, you can work your way into it, Dave. If you get on stage, even a small stage, my first stage was 7 people. If you're on stage and you're intent and you're purposeful and you really want to help, if you think of it as a numbers game, how much money I can make, you'll fail. But if you look at the audience and see people there who desperately need some help, and you imagine that you are a good person to help them and that you'll do an honorable job, then your star will rise on its own and other people will notice you. And important people will take your courses and promote you. And other fellow speakers will have you on their stage. You'll work your way up. So you've seen the after, you didn't see the before. I was terrible in my very first speech. The only thing I'm grateful for in my first speech is that it wasn't recorded. I was trying to sell a $129 real estate course, which should have taken half an hour. And at 3.5 hours, one of the 7 people in the audience stood up, walked on stage and said, "Enough. How much is your program and when is it?" Like 3.5 hours. Because I had no idea. I had no idea what I was doing.
That's fascinating. And so it all kind of grew from there. So what advice would you give then when you're talking to people who, because nowadays I've just hosted an event called Leap in Saudi Arabia. And it was all about the stage I was looking after was all about health tech and all about education tech. Now, one of the things that hit me for the first time in any of the events I've hosted is the amount of people who said, learn public speaking because AI is everywhere. We're all talking about AI, but about 6 or 7 times different people said you must learn to do public speaking. Now, we will talk about AI in a moment. How important do you think that ability to be a great public speaker or even an effective communicator is in the business world today?
Well, I teach a 3-day course on how to be a professional speaker. And there are certain errors that people make when they're on stage, which kill their ability to connect with the audience and kill any possible sales. And when you correct those, then your speech feels wonderful, just wonderful. And the most obvious one is what I call verbal fossils. A fossil is something that was alive a million years ago, and somehow it's still stuck on the wall of a cave today. And people have verbal fossils. They say, or so, or of course, or and it's horrid. And you know that you've spoken to people who say that over and over again, and you have trouble concentrating on their content because you're just waiting for the next, and it's horrible. But I've actually collected 43 errors that people make when they speak. And I teach a course where I go through each of them and then I show you how to identify whether you make those errors. And people typically make 10 of those 43 errors. And during the course of the workshop, I teach them how to get rid of those. But yes, there's rules to everything. If there weren't rules, anybody could be a dentist, anybody could be a neurosurgeon. There are certain things you have to do on stage. I'll just tell you one more. You've seen people come on stage too low. In other words, they amble on stage and say, "Oh my gosh, it was raining so bad outside." And that's too low. You drag the audience down. Or they come on too high. "Hey, if I was any better, I'd have to be twins." And everyone's saying, "Oh, let me out of here." And so you can't come on too strong and you can't come on too weak. You have to come on just a little above the audience and then keep pulling them up, because you can't make a buying decision unless you're high, I don't mean high. I mean, unless you're
Energy.
ebullient, unless you're excited about life. And
I
so you
agree with
have
you.
to start a little above them and then bring them up.
One of the things I talk about with that, and you're a master of it, is getting the Wi-Fi code of your audience. So you work out who they are, what they do, what they're after, and that's that connection. Once you got that Wi-Fi code, you keep it, and you can bring it up, you can bring it down, but you constantly work on that. Now, you, more than most speakers, have an interactive relationship with your audience. I've watched you every single time, just double checking they're with you, double checking they're with you. And that's an amazing way of doing it. Very different from most keynote speakers, but you do it and you take them on a journey from start to finish. Now, I've watched so many speakers, especially at events, go on, talk to the audience, show their slides, and at the end of it, silence, like tumbleweed coming through. And they're like, thank you, and walk off. And people clap out of, is that it? And I look at them, I think that was a great presentation, but you didn't work the audience. You didn't get them on your side. You didn't teach them or train them. So they trained you to raise your game, look desperate. And that's why you ended up thinking and asking me afterwards, how did I do? Well, you did fine, but the audience doesn't know that. So what would you say is the biggest challenge of that? I think is it a confidence thing? Is it a training thing? Or is it the fact that they're just I'm looking now at what I saw last time. There were experts who are great at what they do, but not great at talking to audiences.
So the first thing is you need knowledge. The second thing is you need training. The knowledge is, don't you dare machine gun people for 90 minutes. Don't you dare just broadcast, 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 which is what 99% of people do. See, that's the knowledge. And then the training is, I connect with the audience twice every minute. I'll either tell a joke or I'll say, think about a time. So they have to think about something. Raise your hand if you have done this. Turn to your neighbor and say, you're the most gorgeous person I've ever seen. And then everybody laughs. So I connect with the audience twice every minute for 90 minutes. And so because of that, I obey the rule of the physical universe, which is that the physical universe is a duality. There's always two. You can't just breathe in. If you just keep breathing in, you'll explode. You have to breathe in and breathe out. So if you're in the audience and I'm just broadcasting to you, then I'm breathing out and you're breathing in. It doesn't work. There has to be a duality. You in the audience have to breathe in and breathe out. You breathe in my content and you breathe out a laugh or a hand raise or something. And most speakers do not do that. They just foghorn, they just broadcast. And at the end, the audience is left dead.
That's so true. I was reading a science paper the other day that said that when you breathe in, your head goes empty. And when you breathe out, that's when you speak. Now, I'm not saying it goes empty, empty, but that would make sense in the breathing in and breathing out as opposed to just broadcasting, broadcasting. And one of the things that I show with my trainees when I'm teaching them to speak as well is I say, I don't want you to present. I don't want you to speak for the rest of your life. I want you to have a conversation with the audience where they're sometimes not allowed to join in. So they should feel that you are sat next to them, but you just happen to be on a stage, but you're talking with them all the time. Would you say that's about right for the way that you hold your audience as well?
And that's why I love you, Dave. That's brilliant. You used the most perfect words to explain that. I
Thank you.
can't even add anything.
Excellent.
Perfect.
There's hope for me yet then. That's amazing.
Ah, ah, I'm happy to sit at your feet and learn.
Fantastic. So let's talk about thought leadership, because the challenge for most people is the fact that we've got a couple of things that are happening right now. AI is fascinating. And again, we're going to talk about AI in a moment. And people are starting up businesses in all ways, shape of life. That also means that in education, people have finally worked out that maybe a degree doesn't get you the job, but it gets the education system to make more money out of you. So on the way up, starting a business makes a lot of sense, even if you're not very good at it, just to learn how to make money. But we've also got people at the age of 50 plus who are losing their jobs because they're being put out to pasture because younger people can get that. So you've got this need for people to position themselves as experts, whether it's consultants or running a side hustle. You need to be positioned as a thought leader. Would you say that everybody could be a thought leader, or would you say that everybody should just talk?
Yeah, everybody can be a thought leader. And indeed, you have to position yourself that way by being branded. When you're branded, for example, I had a dentist who was losing money. He didn't have enough patients. And he was putting out flyers in the neighborhood and he was knocking on doors and inviting people to use his dental services. And I said to him, who the hell wants to use your services? They already have a dentist. You're just another dentist. He said, well, everyone's just a dentist. I said, no, the ones who are branded are not just dentists. And so after a while, we did a process that I put people through to get branded. And I branded him as the smiling dentist. And he wrote a book called The Smiling Dentist, and his chair filled up because he's the smiling dentist. Everyone is afraid of going to their dentist because they're going to get shots and they're going to have pain, or they go there with pain. And so he's the smiling dentist. Everyone who you just imagine that if he's the smiling dentist, that all of his patients are smiling and everybody's happy, and his chair filled up and he made a fortune just by being branded. So he's a thought leader. How do you make all of your patients smile? They don't have to. You just have to brand yourself as the smiling dentist and they'll come flooding to you. So people who are branded skyrocket in fame and income. Those people who aren't, then they just suffer because they drown in the sea of sameness. You have to climb up onto the island of individuality so that you can float effortlessly for the rest of your life down the river of relevant differentiation.
I love that. And one of the things I'm very grateful for was you were one of the first people to come back and give me a review for my book, The Thought Leaders Playbook. Now, I want to jump on what you just said there, because right now, social media has driven a world full of influencers. Now, that means that they do get the numbers, or they fake the numbers, but they're not seen as thought leaders, because you need to have a subject that you've proven a level of expertise in that goes above and beyond just likes and comments and shares. And I think that, I mean, I've seen a lot of people that were event organizers throw an influencer on stage because they've got a big audience and a big following, to realize that there's a big difference between a speaker and somebody who's used to having a camera on their own, who's never worked a live audience before. And it's painful to watch. And I see them do it
Yes.
again and again and again.
Yes, it's painful. You're a professional speaker. I'm a professional speaker. We can spot people on stage who are doing a good job within like 30 seconds. And from 30 seconds onward, it's just painful.
Absolutely. And in fact, to be honest, what I look at is within the first 7 to 9 seconds, you can tell whether somebody's a great speaker or not, because they've charmed the audience into a to and fro conversation, even before any
Yes.
slides come up or any other
Yes.
relevance. And that's a mistake that so many people make. They go on stage and then they've got a slide that has their contact details on, or the presentation name, and then they spend 2, 3 minutes justifying they went to Yale and wrote their first book and all. It's like the audience doesn't care. What's in it for me? Just get to the point. Why am I watching you? So you've got to establish your credibility in a very short amount of time, because they want to work out, they're not judging you. They don't care who you are. They just want to work out how congruent you are to be on stage, that they can learn something from you. Are you that good? And I think a great thought leader has the ability to communicate that effectively. But we also have a challenge in the fact that something like 70% of the best inventions ever made stay inside the head of the inventor because he can't sell and they can't speak and they can't pass it on to a potential investor. I mean, you would recognize that because of the fact that you know good and bad speakers, and that ability to get over imposter syndrome and communicate effectively probably. I mean, I think it was a survey of 92% of people had imposter syndrome in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. Yes. And you presented the conundrum very, very well. A speaker has to immediately impress the audience, but not bore the audience with their credentials. A lot of speakers, you're right, they say, this is where I went to school and I'm married with 3.5 kids. And they just, it's just horrible because it goes on and no one in the audience cares because they don't know what that person can do for them. And so you remember how I started. I said, hello, my name is Raymond Aaron, New York Times top 10 best-selling author. People say, wow. Then I say, indeed, I've written 147 books and every one of them was published. And people say, wow. And that's it. I don't have to tell them where I went to school. Nobody cares. But that two sentences is enough to get them to say, holy mackerel, I'm going to listen to this guy.
Definitely.
Later on, I can tell them I'm married and I live in a log cabin way out in the wilderness, but not at the beginning because they don't care yet. You said it very well. And that's a conundrum. And if you're listening to this and you want to be a speaker, you've got one or two sentences to get their awe and then launch into your program.
Absolutely. In fact, when I do a keynote, my first slide is a 30-second introduction to who I am with lots of visuals and everything. And if I'm introduced properly, I bypass that slide. But 99% of the time, I have to go and reset the room and play that
Yes.
video just to make sure that the credibility is there. Because people know that I do hypnosis or stage, they say, Dave Crane's a stage hypnotist. Don't look in his eyes, he'll make you bark like a dog. I'm thinking, this has just killed my stage. So then you got to turn around and say, yeah, but you're not paying me enough to do my show. So therefore, I'm going to press the button and it starts properly. When it comes to doing those shows, what's the biggest challenge? You must have done sets where you go on, you've got to reset the room because the speaker before you, I mean, you sell from the stage. I know you're a great keynote speaker and you're a great comedian when you involve the audience, but you turn the audience into your clients. And that's an amazing skill that most people don't have. What's your challenge to reset the room in the shortest amount of time so it becomes Raymond Aaron flavored?
Well, some things are obvious, but apparently they're not obvious because nobody notices it. I come into the room and the host says, okay, the stage is ready. You're up in half an hour. I said, not on that stage. They say, what's wrong? I say, well, there's a flip chart with some writing on it from the speaker 3 hours ago. Why is that still on stage? They say, oh, doesn't seem to bother anybody. Yeah, well, it bothers me. And the table full of half empty bottles, get rid of that. And I just demand that all the garbage is off the stage so that they can focus on me. And when the introducer introduces me, I don't amble onto the stage. That's way too low energy. I run down the aisle and leap onto the stage. They go, wow. Hi, my name is Raymond Aaron, New York Times top 10 best-selling author. They go, wow, again. And then I've grabbed them. And
You
there's
train
nothing
them,
else.
you train
Yeah.
them, or they will train you.
Very good line. Very good line.
So let's
Yes.
talk
And you
about
know,
sorry, go on.
my motto of life is live full, die empty.
I love that. That's very true. Yeah, mine's jump and grow wings on the way down. And the kind of like that's how been doing things all the way through. And talk about all the way through and the changes that changed for us in our industry. I mean, when we had the pandemic on, for every speaker, it was probably the worst experience ever. Because for about the best part of 2 years, you could go online, but there was a completely different relationship with your audience. And then we hit the ground running or hit the ground ambling because the industry took a while to get its act back together. But we've been given a
Yeah.
gift of AI. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about with AI is most speakers don't know how to use it effectively because to them, it allows them to write a script that's just too verbose or they don't use it for research properly. Now, AI has changed the game right across the world. What's your thoughts on it, first of all? And then how do you say that it really should be used by speakers?
Okay, good. So here's the deal bigger than just speakers. Every disruptive technology in the past has disrupted one industry. Like Ford disrupted automobile manufacturing, and Netflix disrupted how we watch movies. But AI is disrupting every single industry. If anyone is listening to me and you think pompously, well, it can't affect my industry, you're about to fail. And I mean it. You're about to fail because it's disrupting every single industry. Now, listen carefully to this. You will not lose your job to AI, but you will absolutely lose your job or your business to somebody using AI, because I have become a master at AI. I lead a certification course that lots of people are clamoring to get into. And I can show you in minutes how to do something that would have taken you hours or months to do. So when you use AI correctly, you can think 10 times faster and be 10 times brighter than you are. So, for example, in my own company, we will not hire anyone from this day onward unless they are certified in AI, because I don't want somebody when I could get somebody 10 times faster and 10 times smarter with AI. And so I teach AI, I teach the importance of AI, and I teach what you shouldn't do with AI. Like, you can write a book with no heart and no soul by saying to AI, write a book on real estate, write a book on neurosurgery, and it'll produce a crap book because there's no heart in it. And Amazon can tell. Amazon has an app that tells what percent of the writing was done by AI. And if too much of the book is done by AI, they will not only throw your book off Amazon, they will throw off any other legitimate book that you have, and will delete your account so you can't even buy anything from Amazon,
Hmm.
because they're frightened of having a deluge of 10 million books with no heart and no soul.
I can see that, and I can understand exactly why. The amount of books that have been churned out by non-authors that suddenly, look, I've got another book. And no, you haven't. And I think Seth Godin told it. He said AI is to the impact of AI is just like the introduction of electricity to the world.
Yes.
Everything changed when electricity was in. So driving cars as opposed to going on horses. So if you embrace it, suddenly you've got a really high level game. If you don't embrace it, you're in the Stone Ages. And I think that kind of
Yes.
sums it all out. But as a speaker, not just as a writer, how would you integrate AI into your speaker business model?
Instead of asking AI to give you the content, so instead of saying, I want to give a talk on the impact of the lockdown on children who were born after the lock or something like that. Instead of asking it for content, you got to go deeper and say, what are the three things I should do to connect best with an audience? And learn from AI. Because instead of just asking it to give you data, you can actually ask it to solve problems for you. What is the best way to start? What is the best way to end? How can I create jokes without being phony? Those types of questions can really improve your ability as a speaker, but just asking it to give you content is useless.
I agree completely. It's like being given Mr. Spock as your best mate or your office clerk or something. Always going to be a bit boring. Might be humorous, but not the same as having a real human. But certainly the heavy lifting that you would have to do for months or weeks of research, you can get in an instance. And I was with a
Yes.
gentleman today who's an AI expert as well. And he was saying that his algorithm that he's putting into, he was a guy, he's called Angelo Dali. And he was a guy that when you got your iPhone and you tap on it, he created the haptic pushback that you feel when you're using that. So he's been in AI for 20 years. And what he's working on is a system that feeds the LLM that stops it hallucinating and making up so much rubbish to fill a gap. So it's got more human responses than ever before, including saying what the truth is as far as it knows. It doesn't just make it up. So we're going to find that the whole process of using AI will become more user friendly. But I think then there's no excuse for us to not raise our game to accommodate that at the same time.
If you're in business, you're about to fail if you don't know AI, because your competitor is learning AI and is 10 times brighter and 10 times faster than you. If you are, if you have an employment, then pretty soon your employer will get rid of you because for the same salary, they can get somebody 10 times faster and 10 times brighter than you because they're certified in AI. Don't you dare apply for a job. Don't even bother because every large and medium sized company now is demanding that people know AI. Why? I mean, you might as well get somebody 10 times brighter.
Yeah, I agree with you
So
completely. I was going to say
it's
that your ability to work an audience, your ability to interact with an audience. I think that what you and I have as speakers is a massive advantage over prompt engineers because we know when we talk to an audience what response we get back and how to mold that and how to get the very best out of it. So when we're going on to ChatGPT or whatever the choice is, you know the choice of words to get the fastest possible response. And I think that's one advantage that speakers bring to the table if they're used to using it effectively. Would you say that's true for you when you use AI?
there there is no limit to AI. Like, listen to this. Ford Motor Company took 40 years to get its millionth buyer. Netflix took 3.5 years to get its millionth subscriber. Facebook took 1 year to get its millionth subscriber. And Dave, ChatGPT with no advertising took 5 days. 5 days. It's the fastest growing thing on the planet. It's the fastest growing thing that has ever grown. It's taking over everything. If you don't know AI, if you're not certified in AI, you're about to get crushed, especially if you just said inside your head, nah, I'm safe, especially you.
Especially the fact that ChatGPT are now powering robots. And they're using that technology to make physical robots do their stuff. And that makes it even more scary, but also interesting. And you've just moved slightly out of picture to get more cat in, which is kind of weird, but there we go. But back in again. There we are. I've got you in a little box, you see. We're both in
Oh,
boxes next to each other. And now we've got your cat. What's your cat's name?
friendly.
Friendly. That's a good name for a cat.
Yeah.
Excellent. And I've got two dogs, one of which is down here. She's called Snow. And earlier there were some bangers for fireworks that went off during Ramadan, and she hates the noise of lightning,
Uh,
thunder, whatever. So I'm surprised she didn't pop up or go under the table or so. So it's a beauty of having pets, which is great. So with that, let's look at the challenges that face the world of speakers and the change in the industry. I'm finding that everywhere you go, somebody's declaring themselves to be a speaker. But I also find that the quality of speakers is generally going down because everybody is saying that. What would you say is a magic tip that you would give somebody if they wanted to launch themselves as a speaker that's very effective, or also if they are a speaker but they want to differentiate themselves from the amount of people that are saying I do that in that subject? What would you say from an experienced speaker who's been around the world, works for the biggest stars, is the magic tablet of not magic tablet, but the blue pill that they should take to get what they need?
Here's the pill. High tech needs high touch. The more high tech there is around, the more there's the need for human touch. And with AI, the amount of high tech has skyrocketed. And so when you're on stage, the number one thing you need to do is make a human connection. Make them love you, even deprecate yourself. Like some people say, I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree, or I'm one sandwich short of a picnic. You may not want to deprecate yourself, but in some way, you have to make them love you because there's too much high tech. They don't need any more content. We don't need more content. So, the biggest thing I can tell you, if I tell you one thing, make the human connection and you'll sell everything that you wish to sell. You'll get invited back by the host and the audience will love you.
Fantastic. That is exactly right. The one thing I want to ask you about now is about books. because you're an expert. You've had books out. You work with some of the best authors. Your friends are Jack Canfield, Robert Kiyosaki, Dr. John Gray, all these people, and you are a best-selling author. Now, the importance of having a book can't be understated, because in a world where everyone's positioning themselves as thought leaders, you need to have that trust, that credibility, that proof that you know what you're talking about. That's what a book gives you. But most people don't know where to start. Could you give me a little potted list of things that they should do, a roadmap towards having that book out and on the shelves? Or does it even need to go on the shelves? Can it just be a glorified business card?
The first time I ever spoke in Dubai, Mr. Dave Crane was the master of ceremonies. And what he said was, and now, all the way from Canada, Raymond Aaron, author of the New York Times bestseller Chicken Soup for the Parent Soul. In other words, okay, I had a New York Times bestseller. David chose to mention it. I have lots of other books. If I weren't a bestseller, he could still talk about another book. He could say, author of Double Your Income Doing What You Love. Nobody will know how many copies it sold. Nobody will know if it raced up the charts or whether just my mother bought one. When you have a book, it's the most spectacular calling card. It's the most spectacular billboard there could ever be. Nobody really cares, and I'm not insulting you. I love your podcast, but nobody cares if you have a podcast. Nobody cares if you have 100 YouTube videos out. Nobody cares. They don't care how many millionaires you've made. They don't care how many people's lives you've saved. But for some reason, they care if you've written a book. It's the strangest thing. People don't care how many people I've made millionaires. They don't care. They care that I've written a book, and they will care when you write a book.
Why is that? I'll tell you why I ask that. Because when in the old days, you could only get onto TV because you were either ordained by a higher power or your family worked in TV. So therefore, when social media first started, if you popped up on your own TV style podcast, people look like, well, whoa, shiny, amazing. But now everyone can do it with their own iPhone or Samsung and start creating videos. But a book is something that has that same impact as the early videos. Is it because the challenge of making a book is so difficult?
I I have an idea. Before the year 1500, there were only 10 books in the whole world. In the whole world, there was only 10 books, and they were written by kings and popes, because then you had to write on scratchy paper that had actually blotches in it, and ink blobs fell down on the paper. It was horrible. And it took years to write one copy of one book. Then when the Gutenberg press came along around 1500, wealthy merchants could write books. And so the number of books exploded to thousands. And people were dazzled because just recently only kings and popes could write a book. And for some reason, for the last 500 years, that feeling of awe about an author still shines today. People are still blown away. That's my, and by the way, it used to be hard to write a book, but I have a 3-day course in which I take you right from the beginning to the end, and you can actually finish your book in 3 days. Not 10 years, 3 days. And I have published thousands of books for my clients, and they finish their book in 3 days.
That's amazing. And I'll be giving all your links underneath the podcast so people can connect with you on your social media. They can get on your courses and they can get closer to the stuff that you do to change the world, which is fantastic. So with a
Can
final,
I,
go on, go ahead.
can I say one thing? There's one email address that I'd like to offer, and that's help@aaron.com. If you're interested in getting certified in AI, or if you're interested in writing a book, just email me at help@aaron.com, and I'll take great care of you.
There you go. You got it from the master's mouth. That's the thing you should be typing in as we speak. A final thought, Raymond, is this. Where do you see the future of thought leaders and speakers being? We're going through a kind of weird flux at the moment where people are putting their stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff that's true. There's a lot of fake media. There's a lot of different things that are happening. Where do you think the sweet spot is? Do you think it's having a podcast, a book, a live event, having a following, an omni-channel where everyone can reach you? Or is there some other thing that's coming that most people don't even know exists or should exist soon? No
Well,
pressure.
my my thought is you must have a book in order to be distinguished. But listen to why you have to be distinguished. In the olden days, I don't know, 1800s, when life was pretty normal, life didn't change much. In fact, the then president of the United States in 1899 sent a message to all his department heads saying, "What's the biggest thing we can look forward to in the next century?" And the head of the patent department said, "The biggest thing you can do is close the patent department because everything that's going to be invented has already been invented." 1899. And so things were normal. Things didn't change much. When things didn't change much, people felt safe. And so they could use your services or they could use somebody else's services. So everyone could make a buck. But right now, we are in unbelievably turbulent times, incredibly turbulent times. In such chaos, it creates fear. In such fear, people hang on to their money and they'll release it only begrudgingly. And they will release it only begrudgingly to thought leaders, not to some guy down the street that happens to be convenient. If you want to thrive in these horribly troubled times, then you need to stand out. You need to be branded.
That is so true. That is amazing. That's a great way to end this incredible podcast and chat. And there's so much stuff that you shared in there. It's going to take a while to go back over it again and grab all those nuggets and put them into action. And I think that's a challenge for many people because there's so much content. But when you speak to somebody who knows what they're doing, is actually walking the talk, that's what makes a huge difference. Raymond, it's been a pleasure having you on today's Speak on Stage. I look forward to catching up with you again soon. And look after your cat, look after yourself. And I know that wherever you are, you're going to look after your audience. Thank you so much for joining us on today's session. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the experience of chatting to Raymond as much as I did. One of the things I will share with you is he is the real deal. Make sure you do that email, help@aaron.com, and also Google him. You will not be disappointed. He's one of the very best of the best. Now, if you want to be a thought leader and you want to meet more incredible people just like Raymond, this is the best place to do it. I look forward to sharing with you some more insights with some more incredible guests on the next episode of Speak on Stage. We show you how to jump and grow wings on the way down. Thank you for tuning into another insightful episode of Speak on Stage with Dave Crane. We hope you found today's conversation inspiring, packed with valuable insights to help you to amplify your presence on stage too. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more inspiring speakers just like yourself. Remember, the stage is your platform to shine. And with the right tools and mindset, you can captivate any audience anywhere. So keep honing your craft, refining your message, and never shy away from the spotlights. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll dive even deeper into the world of public speaking and performance. Until then, keep speaking, keep shining, and keep making an impact. This is Dave Crane signing off. See you next time and Speak on Stage.